Okay. All right. Thank you all so much for joining us. So why don't we get started? Because we have a lot to cover, and also gives us more time for a Q&A. So we're gonna get started. Hello, everyone. My name is Teresa Liao. I am the content marketing specialist here at SciNote. So I'll be your host today. We're going to the webinar now. So if you have any questions, feel free to enter in the chat box, and we will be able to help handle some of those questions. If you have any questions about the presentation, you can use the Q&A function to kind of post the question there, so that the panelists will be able to answer around the end of the presentation. Today, the topic is creating a collaborative lab with an ELN. So this topic came up during a kind of internal discussion, and we're chatting about how collaboration is often the topic that we kind of miss. It's something that's so important, so critical for the growth of an organization, and for kind of getting things working together. So we really want to put some emphasis in this webinar session. So today we have two presenters, and I will be your host. So first of all, I would like to introduce Dr. Yannick Strauss from Numaferm, and he is the scientist who handles downstream processing analytics. That's Yannick. And then we hi Yannick. And then we also have Arun Durais-Wami. Arun is the customer success manager here at SciNote, and Arun has a background in biomedical engineering, and actually prior to working at SciNote, he also worked in medical devices product development. So he also has a lot of experience, a personal experience, I believe, on collaboration and how collaboration is critical for the success of an organization. So we're gonna go next to a quick overview of today. We're gonna start with an introduction, which is what we're doing right now. Then we're gonna go into Yannick's presentation on managing successful collaboration in a biotech lab. That'll be about 15 minutes. Then we'll go into the tips and tricks for better collaboration by using an ELN, and Arun will cover that topic. Then after that, we'll bring everybody back, and we'll kind of go through a discussion about the best practices for facilitating communication and collaboration. And that's where we'll have a few questions for the panelists, and we'll kind of go into a bit of a discussion mode. And then during this time, if you have any questions for the panelists, feel free to drop your question in the question and answer box that you will see, and we will be able to answer those questions during the Q&A session. That's about 10 minutes. And yeah, so I think that's it for the introduction. But before we head into the first presentation, we have a little pool for everyone. We're interested in knowing what type of collaboration are you involving? Are you involving collaboration with other members in your team, or with other departments and teams in the same organization, or with some external organization, companies, institutes, or maybe you are involved in collaborations within a community of organization. And lastly, we put in an other, so that it's like a catch-all. So if you put other down, feel free to drop the other, like your answer for the other, inside the chat so we can take a look. So we're gonna give everyone a few seconds. Alaya, oh, sorry, I should mention, we have Alaya from SciNote. You don't see her because she's the one that has a SciNote LLC on the name, but Alaya will be helping us with handling the backend. So for example, she will be handling the chat and also the pool to make sure that the session runs smoothly. So thank you, Alaya. All right, if we have a lot of people, make sure to put in your choices for the pool question. And also, this is a multiple choice question. So if you are involved in different types of collaborations, feel free to select more than one option. All right. Alaya, how are we doing with the number of people submitting the poll questions? If we are looking good, then there we go. And can you share the results with us? Perfect. All right, so we have majority of the attendees here today collaborating with other members in the team. which kind of make a lot of sense, because we all have a team that we work with. And then there are quite a few actually working with other departments and teams in the same organization. Some of you with external organizations, and also with a very small number with a community of organizations, and actually nobody with others. So I did a good job with the setting up the questions because we capture everybody. So great. So we're going to offer a lot of tips today. And if you have any specific questions that's covered not in the presentation, do feel free to enter your question in the Q&A, and we'll see how we can help answering some of those questions. All right, so we're gonna go into our first presentation. I'm going to stop sharing so Yannick can go ahead, and it's about managing successful collaboration in a biotech lab. Go ahead, Yannick.
Thank you very much, and thanks for the introduction. Let me share my screen. There we go. Okay, so yeah, I'm going to present a few slides about how SciNote helps us to collaborate efficiently here at Numaferm. But let's start with a short introduction about us and our different teams here. So we are a service company that offers the sustainable and highly efficient production of peptides and proteins, anything in between 30 to 100 amino acids, really. And we were founded in 2017, started with about 6 people, and are now 30 people here in Düsseldorf. And so far we have successfully completed projects with lots of companies, including some big players such as Numaferm, Evonik, AstraZeneca. And we operate in a range of different market segments, for example, pharma, cosmetics, agriculture, and others. And we have also just launched our first products, a standard TEF protease and a high performance variant. A bit more about our teams and departments. Our company is split in 3 major departments. One is molecular biology, which is doing the construct design and initial target expression tests. That means they program the bacteria to produce the target peptide or protein. And then upstream processing is optimizing the protein expression and scales up the cultures and bioreactors. That means they simply grow the bacteria that produce our target peptide or protein. And then downstream processing and analytics, and this is where I'm located in, finally purifies the target peptide protein from the bacterial cell, lysate, and analyzes the final product. Now, today's webinar is about collaborating efficiently, and we here at Numaferm think that the key to efficient collaboration is communication. And that obviously includes the spoken and written communication, you write emails, meetings, but it also includes, for example, how data is communicated in between and within departments. And how information is relayed between those. And this is exactly where SciNote comes in handy. So let's look into this in a little bit more detail with a few examples about how SciNote facilitates the effective collaboration here at Numaferm. Let's stay with the example of communicating or relaying data. So sometimes when I'm doing an experiment, I need to access data that was generated by other people. For example, we have Andreas and upstream processing. If I need to access data, I can just go ahead and navigate my way through our local folder structure to find the information I need. I promise it doesn't look as bad as it's displayed here. We have a system in place, obviously, for storing data, naming folders that makes it easier to navigate. And this works well on a top level. But when you are trying to find specific experimental data, potentially generated by a different department, by someone else who may organize their data a bit differently on sub-levels, then it gets very difficult. So quite often I actually need to ask Andreas to dig out the data for me, which isn't very effective. Now with SciNote, this gets much easier, because if you need to find data, you first select the team by which it was generated. So in this example, this would be the upstreaming department. You can then open a project and an experiment you're interested in. This will take you to this nice flow chart that you can see here of all the performed tasks. And this makes finding the data you're interested in very straightforward, right? It really takes you through the process and helps you to navigate you to the details that you need to know. So I think this is a very neat way to document data, and it definitely helps us to work together efficiently as you spend less time searching for data or asking someone else for data. Now, another example of how SciNote helps us to work together efficiently is shown here. Let's say I need to assign a task to Jose, who sits in molecular biology. And I might also have a few questions about an experiment he was doing. Now, I could just go ahead and talk to him in person, but that's not always possible, right? He might be on holiday or might be in home office. And if I have to ask a question, I might also need to have the data that question relates to. So I could go ahead and send an email, attach all the data and the question that relates to as an attachment, and assign a task to him, for example. But sometimes those emails get lost, and maybe you forget about the task. And what we found is that all this can actually be handled much better and more reliably using SciNote again as a platform. When you open an experiment in SciNote, what you can do is you can assign tasks to people. So here I put Jose. You can add a start date, you can add a due date, and this task will then pop up in an individual task list every user has, so you don't forget about this. And this also helps us to then track the timelines and make sure that we make sufficient progress in the timelines to meet our internal timelines. So you can also update the status of the task in an experiment. So we have tasks, for example, that are still in progress. Then there are some tasks that were just completed and other tasks that are in review. So that's also a very neat feature to keep an overview of where you are with your project. And finally, if there are any questions about tasks, we can directly address them via a comment function directly where the data is. So here I tagged Jose and asked a question. He'll get a notification, won't forget about this question, and can answer the question with the data all at hand. So no need to dig out graphs and send them as attachments. So that's also a very neat feature. And finally, let's talk about the traceability of chemicals or materials used. Let's say I need to know which purification column was used for which project in order to avoid cross-contamination. We could document this, of course. For example, we could document the use of purification columns in a shared Excel file. And don't get me wrong, we love Excel, but the problem is that when you're working with several people on the same Excel file, we found that it gets messy quite quickly. So if we want to do the column management, for example, in our downstream processing department, we actually use SciNote now as an alternative to trace the use of chemicals and materials. So for this, we opened a SciNote team in which we store all the data we need to keep our lab running, for example, the column management. And then we simply made an entry for each purification column that we have. And in those, we store the data that relates to each column, for example, performance tests, or if a column needs to be washed. And when we do the experiments, we then go ahead and link the column that was used via the link function. And if you now want to find out in which experiments this particular column was previously used, you can just search for the column name and get a list with all the experiments in which it was mentioned in. So this is now a very easy way with minimal effort to keep track of your materials or chemicals, which is obviously very important for quality management. So to sum up this presentation, SciNote helps us to collaborate efficiently by providing really a platform for the straightforward communication or relay of information. It specifically helps us to document and access experimental data within and across departments, assign tasks or responsibilities, track project progress, address questions, or trace chemicals and materials. Yeah, and with this, I would like to thank you for your attention, the opportunity to speak here. If you want to get in touch, here's our phone number and email address. And I think, yeah, at the end of this session, we'll have time to answer some questions. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Yannick. All right, so we are gonna go next right into the next section, which would be Arun sharing some tips and tricks about how you can use an ELN for collaborative lab work.
Awesome. Thank you, Teresa. And thank you, Yannick, for that wonderful presentation of a real life application of how SciNote can empower collaboration. Teresa, can you see my screen okay?
Yep, perfect.
Perfect. Okay. Hello, everyone. As Teresa mentioned at the beginning, my name is Arun. I'm a customer success manager at SciNote. So the customer success team at SciNote, we work very closely with all our customers, and we help get them onboarded onto SciNote, and also help them set up SciNote for their specific use case and help them integrate it into their day-to-day workflow. So today, I'm just going to go over a few pointers on how you can do this in SciNote. I'll also put into action some of the things that Yannick referred to in his presentation, so you can see how it works inside SciNote. And of course, in the end, if you have any questions specifically related to functionalities in SciNote, I'll be happy to answer them towards the end. Okay, to start out with, what I have open here is the overview dashboard in SciNote. It's the first thing that you see as soon as you log into SciNote. And as you can see, mine looks pretty colorful with a lot of different things going on. But one really neat thing about this overview dashboard is you can filter it down to just show the information that's relevant to you. So for example, let's say you're a manager or a team lead, and you want to understand what the status is of all the activities happening with your specific project. Well, if you come to this overview dashboard, you can use some of our filters here, and you can filter down to a specific project. Let's see if I can find one of my projects. And then within that project, if you have multiple experiments, you can pull up one of those experiments. And then let's say you just want to look at completed tasks or pending tasks, you can filter by that. And when you create these filters, you'll see that the list becomes much shorter, giving you a much more granular view of what the status is on that particular project. Of course, you can also just look at the tasks that are assigned to you if you're working on your own activities. So if you click assign to me here, it just shows anything that's been assigned to you and not to the rest of the team. And then to the right of that is just a nice little calendar that visually represents when there are any deadlines coming up for tasks assigned to your team. So once again, whether you're an independent contributor or you're a supervisor, you can quickly come here and take a look at what's coming up next week and the weeks after that. Or if anything was overdue and hasn't been completed, you'll be able to quickly identify that as well. All right, so now I'll jump right into one of our projects here. All right, so one thing that Yannick alluded to earlier was using comments to communicate with people. And it is very simple to do in SciNote and very effective. So one example is once you've created the tasks, you can directly drop comments on each task card. All you have to do is use the @ and you can tag someone on your team. And you can leave them a message or a note to come and review something in this particular task, or that the task has been set up for them to start. So it's a quick and easy way to leave a comment there. Of course, inside the task as well, you have the opportunity to drop comments on specific steps. So for example, I have a step here. If I want to leave a comment specific to this step, let's say I notice that something is incorrect or needs to be fixed, I just click the comment, same thing, @ find someone on the team and say, please and now that person, when they log into SciNote, they will get a notification up here to the comment, and they can come in, open the comment, view it, and then they can also leave a response to your comment telling you that, hey, this is done, it's ready to go. So it's a nice way of communicating with each other at the task level, so you know what you're talking about, and you can quickly reference the subject of discussion. And also, all these comments are captured in the audit trail and activity log. So at any point in time, you can always look back and have full traceability on what comment appeared when, what changes were made after that, if there were any changes made, and who made those changes and who left the comment. So it's a very robust way of capturing all this information. All right, so the next thing I wanted to cover is actually using SciNote's Microsoft Office integration. So this is something that a lot of users that I work with really enjoy because it allows you, so if I create a new step, it allows you to directly create a Word document, a spreadsheet, or a PowerPoint slide deck inside of SciNote. And then you can actually begin adding data to it inside of SciNote. All the changes get saved, and the file is forever hosted inside the task at SciNote. And when you're done, you can pass it along to someone else, or if you're working on it with someone else, they can open it up, pick up where you left off, and continue building on top of that. So a quick illustration of how that works. So let's say we have a spreadsheet with a lot of data, and there's multiple people working on analyzing this data. So you would just create a spreadsheet on SciNote. And it opens the online version of Excel. So you get all the functionality that you would find in Excel online. And here you can add your data. And any changes that I make, as soon as I've made that edit or change, it auto-saves. And so now if I close this, those changes are automatically saved here. And someone else comes to this task, opens it up, they will see those changes that I made, and then they can continue working on it. Of course, if you need to collaborate with someone that doesn't have SciNote, that's not a problem. You can always download this file with the changes saved, email it to them, have them review it, make the changes, send it back to you, and then you can re-upload it to SciNote to be attached to the task. And then on the task level, one more thing I'd like to go over here is the assign to. So this is really useful with organizations where there's 1 or 2 people that are setting up the workflow and then assigning the tasks to other people on the team. So for example, I can set up the entire workflow for a particular experiment, including loading the protocols and all the steps. And then I can just come into each task and assign it to different individuals, and they will get notifications right away that they've been assigned a task, and then they'll know which task it is, come right in and continue or start completing the task. And speaking of workflows, at the task level, you'll notice these little task cards that we have. So SciNote is very flexible in how you want to set it up. So if you spend a decent amount of time in the beginning setting up how you want SciNote to work for your organization, it can really save a lot of time in the long run. The beginning part can be a little painful just to set it up because you have to understand how it works and how it best suits your organization. But that's where the customer success team can really be helpful to you because they know the ins and outs of SciNote, and we can tell you where certain things might work and where you may run into certain hurdles. So once you've spent that time establishing how SciNote will work for your organization, with like any workflows, all you need is 1 or 2 people setting it up, because workflows can be easily duplicated. So I can take this entire workflow that I spent some time creating here, and I can use this as a template and move it to a different project. So if there's a workflow or a set of protocols that are repeated fairly often, all you have to do is set it up once, and then you can continue using that as a template multiple times. So it makes it very easy to set up tasks, workflows, and assign it to other people. And then one other topic I would like to talk about is something that I've seen with some of my customers. So they work as contract research organizations where they take on small projects from other companies. And so they may have a lot of different customers that they work with. So in SciNote, it's very easy for them to organize their data, either making each customer a project or making each customer a team. So all the data for that particular customer is siloed within those walls in SciNote. So there's no crossover of data, no data loss issues. And the added benefit of this is, let's say for some reason, the customer you're working with needs to come in and do a little bit of work in SciNote to help you wrap up the project. Well, you can grant them a license, and you can also customize their permissions to the very minute levels, where they can have access to a certain project, a certain experiment, and a certain task. And you can also limit the level of access they have, where they can just come in and view, or they can come in and make changes as well. So that's something that I've seen a few of our customers use to enable collaboration with some of the external organizations they work with, or sometimes they bring in contractors for a short term. So this really works well for situations like that. And then the last really neat thing with the projects in SciNote is, let's say you are in a situation like this where you're taking projects from external customers, and you've completed a project, and now you want to do a complete data transfer to that particular customer. Well, in SciNote, you can export an entire project, and that will include all the data in the project, such as all the steps in the protocol, all the different protocols, the results from each protocol, inventory items that were used, and also the audit trail. So this really allows you to see when things were completed, who they were completed by, and if there's any discrepancies anywhere, it makes it a lot easier to identify where something went wrong. And the last item that I want to discuss is our API functionality. So SciNote has an API that we give our customers access to. And some of our customers really take advantage of the API to do some really cool things. I have a customer that's integrated the API with SAP because they have to manage all their internal records on the SAP database, and all their scientific research is on SciNote. So they've used API to set it up where the data, when a project is automatically completed, the data gets transferred or migrated to SAP, and it's stored there as well to be accessed by users that might not have access to SciNote. And then I've seen some of our other customers use the API to work with other external software, such as QuickBooks. I know of a customer that's using the API in SciNote to talk to their supply requests that they've set up in SharePoint. So really, any other software that has API functionality can talk to SciNote and can import or export data. And if you do take advantage of that, it can be very powerful. And the last item, sorry, I forgot one more item. The last item is the electronic signatures. And I just wanted to touch on this because this is commonly used with a lot of our customers that are bound by any compliance regulations. And the electronic signature process allows you to complete a task, but before that task is fully approved, it can be reviewed by someone and signed off on. So there's an electronic stamp that says this task was reviewed by the appropriate person and signed off on before you can move on to the next task. And of course, if something is wrong or there's something missing with the task or the data, you can reject the signature, leave your comments saying hey, this and this is incorrect. Please go back and fix it before I can improve it. So yeah, that's kind of all the quick little tips and tricks I have related to collaboration with SciNote. Of course, if you have any questions or you want to discuss this in further detail, you can always let me or someone on my team know, and we can definitely help you with that.
Thank you very much, Arun. That's great. And it's great to know, like, I was making notes myself because I always like, when I come to the webinars myself, like it's always new things I learn about really cool things that SciNote can do. All right, so we're gonna go into the next session, which will be a discussion session. And let me share my screen again quickly. There we go. All right, so our discussion topic is best practices for facilitating communication and collaboration. And so I have some questions, broad questions that I'm hoping the panelists can help answer. So the first one I have is really to start with is, what do you consider the key for having a successful collaboration? You know, we look at, you know, having SciNote, like what is the key factor you think that will actually make the collaboration successful within, you know, organization environment, or within the team, or within, you know, any collaboration between people?
Should I go ahead?
Yeah, go ahead, please, Yannick.
So I think the key for successful collaboration is open, direct, immediate communication across departments and within teams. I mean, this is what my presentation was about, really. So a platform for communication and for the relay of information, sharing of data that everyone has access to is ideal for this. Yeah, so an electronic lab book really helps us there.
Right. So like company cultural has a little bit to do, like quite a bit to do with this, I guess, because you need to have that kind of open dialogue and open conversation to kind of have everyone on the same page.
Yes, exactly.
Arun, do you have anything to add? What do you think is the key for having a successful collaboration?
So from my experience helping customers in SciNote, and also from my previous experience, what I've seen to be very helpful is having a good process that you set up front. So I mentioned this earlier when I was discussing some of the tips and tricks. Spending that time in the beginning, setting up a strong process, even though it can be painful and there may be people that are not happy with adapting to a new process, but if you spend the time setting it up in the beginning, in the long run, you'll really reap the benefits, and it makes the communication and collaboration very seamless, and you avoid any pitfalls or gaps where things can go awry.
Right, that's a very good point, and that's something that, you know, that tends to come up even in product, like when I'm looking at, you know, kind of like research for how people have a successful process, and it's that kind of setting things up right, and then having that communication. And at the end of the day, it's really people. I think you both touch on this very important thing, which is about people, because any technology you use, you know, it's technology, but having the people, you know, communicating with each other, having the people, you know, aware of the process and be on the same page, it seems to be pretty critical for a successful collaboration. Now, for an organization that just, you know, haven't been doing a lot of collaboration, want to get started on that, and they want to have that first, you know, step or first few steps, like moving in that direction of having successful collaboration. I think you both touch on a little bit on that. But is there anything very specific that you can suggest for, like, if what kind of step to take, you know, to have that collaborative environment?
Yeah, so I think what you can do is check your current processes, like where do things go wrong, where does information get lost, then get the whole team aligned on certain procedures along the way. And I mean, that touches on Arun's point, and encourage the team also to express if they notice that something does not go well, so that think that these things can then be fixed and optimized.
That's a very good point. So kind of review your existing thing, and then that's kind of getting the information and getting the data of like previous process and kind of figuring out where to improve. So that's a very important point. Arun, anything else to add over there?
Yeah, sure. One thing I would add to that is taking advantage of any resources that are available to you, especially if you're just getting started with setting up a system or a process. Nowadays there's a tool or a software to automate or handle a lot of the automation of things that used to be manual. So if you spend a little time looking around, you can find things that will make setting it up a lot easier than it used to be, say, like 15 years ago.
Right. And when you mention resources, I also thought of our customer success support, because like taking advantage of that when you're setting up your process is starting our first step seems to be also very helpful as well. I want to come back a little bit on kind of, we talk about the first step, we talk about what are the critical factors, and then I think we all cover a little bit, but is there any other main benefits, or like if say you're going to a stakeholder, you are telling the stakeholder, hey, we need to invest in this, we need to communicate this, we need to create this collaborating environment. What can you say to kind of convince them the importance of collaboration? Like, what are the main benefits of this kind of collaborative approach, like that you can see based on your experience?
I think you really maximize your efficiency, and you also make sure that processes are less error prone, and probably you just expand your expertise or your task, services that you can offer if you start collaborating with others.
Okay, perfect. And Arun?
I'd probably emphasize what Yannick said related to setting up a good culture of communication and finding the right tools to empower that.
Right. Perfect. And I think that overall, I think it does improve that, like efficiency, like Yannick say, efficiency and preventing error, because we know things like that can be really costly, especially if you're working on a tight deadline or if you have a specific contract commitment to make. I think that's a really great point to kind of get the stakeholder on board. I just got a message from Elia to ask people to send their questions in again. It seems like something might be lost in the middle. So if you submitted any questions, please make sure to send it through the chat or in the Q&A box, so that we can answer it in the next section. All right. So is there anything else that you would like to add about having a collaborative environment in lab that you think would be important for people who are kind of looking for creating that environment and looking for working with others?
I think you should provide room for teams and departments to discuss projects, for example, right, in the form of regular project meetings. But you have to make sure that these meetings are prepared well in advance for them to be effective, and only invite those people that actually need to be there. Obviously, not everyone needs to be in every meeting, but if those are set up well, then I think those can hugely boost the collaborative effort.
Right, that's a great point. And especially like you mentioned earlier, like having a review of the process and bringing that information, for example, to the meeting, right? And then having a discussion on that. So like kind of collect the data first and then bring that to the meeting and having the key people involved to be at that discussion. That makes a lot of sense. Arun, anything you want to add to what kind of other things that people should consider when it comes to like creating that collaborative environment to make sure to have that collaborative environment for working together?
I would say definitely, especially if you're a leader or a manager, definitely take advantage of the experience that your team has. So talk to your team members, especially if they're coming from different types of experiences. They may be able to draw on their past experience and tell you some potential issues they faced, and it may prompt ideas on how that might impact you and what you could do to avoid experiencing something similar with your particular team.
Right, that's a very good point, to kind of learn from each other. Yeah, and that's really critical. So to kind of wrap up kind of the discussion a little bit, it sounds like that there's a lot of the key is really people. And oh, Yannick, you want to add anything before I go into wrapping up
No,
this?
it's fine.
Oh, okay, perfect. I saw you raise your hand. So just to quickly wrap up the discussion, session. So it sounds like that the key is really all the people, you know, like having that open environment for communication, for discussion, and kind of establishing that process together and learning from each other, as well as, you know, setting that process of like, you know, working together to set up the process, you know, early on, so that down the road, it's like a very, you know, you kind of have the same expectation of how things should go, seems to be the critical key elements of having a successful collaboration. So that's really wonderful. Thank you both. So, okay, so we are going to move next into our Q&A session. And again, if you have any questions, please make sure to submit it to the chat or through the Q&A box. And I do have a few questions here that we can get started. So let me see. All right. I think this is a good question for both of you. I think you all cover a lot of the features with ELN with SciNote. And is there any one feature, one thing, if you have to pick one feature, and I know this would be really hard, that you think that you just cannot live without? Like if you don't have this function, you're just not gonna be you're not gonna be happy about it. So is there any one feature that you have used that you think would be like critical when it comes to like having the digital tool for a collaborating environment?
I think for me, that would be this organization of data and this kind of flow chart for the task. So we now notice that with projects that are quite complex, it really helps to see where some experiment originated and then which routes it went down. So that really helps us to keep a good overview, not miss maybe some branches that you did a few months ago.
Right. So like the workflow, right? Like kind of like going from point A to B, or maybe to go to C1, C2, C3, different branches out. That sounds very, okay. That sounds like a really critical. And I think it's also unique because a bit in the SciNote, because it's kind of like a visual way of seeing the project in kind of its overview. So, okay, that's great. That's great to know. And Arun, do you have any feature that you heard from the customers that we work with, you know, like what's like, if there's one feature you are to take away from them, that we're gonna get a lot of complaints the next day?
Oh, that's hard. So I'm gonna cheat and say two things. one that a lot of our customers use and really like is the Microsoft Office integration, especially because they if they're working with a lot of data,
right,
almost all, not all, but a majority of data analysis takes place in Excel. Is very powerful and commonly used. And having the built-in Excel add-on is really nice because you can do a lot of the work in SciNote and leave the file there. So you're not sending each other emails of updated files or revised files. It stays in SciNote, and then someone else can pick up where you left off, and it always remains in SciNote, and you know you can access it from anywhere as long as you have an internet connection. So that's one. The other one that I've seen to be really powerful, but is it maybe a bit underrated or not as oftenly used, is the search function in SciNote. So SciNote's search function is very powerful because it can actually search for keywords inside files that you've attached. No matter how well you organize all your data, there's always something somewhere that you're like, oh, where is that one file that I'm looking for? And if you have a keyword, you can search for it. And in SciNote, all the search results are filtered by where that keyword is found. So you can quickly find what you're looking for if you know what type of, if it's a project, a task, or an attachment, and if you have a keyword that you're looking for. So that's something that the customers that do use it really do appreciate that.
Right. I really like the categories because it doesn't just give me a whole list of like random things that I have to then figure out what they are. But like, I like that it's like categorizing like experiments. It can be a task, it can be a protocol when I'm doing the search. So I think that's definitely a very powerful feature. And the fact to be able to save like Office files directly based on your project structure really kind of save that, you know, having to look for the corresponding file. And I think that's a very good point. All right, I have a question here. How long does it take to get used to doing team management in SciNote? I don't know if Yannick or Arun, you have the experience of doing team management, and I assume this probably means like, you know, assigning people, like getting people to see, assess certain project or task or experiment. Like, how long does it take to kind of really get used to it?
I think it's not so much about how long does it take to get used to the team management. It's just the whole, how do you use SciNote? Like, it will probably take you, let's say, a few days to really get used to all the functions, but I found it relatively straightforward, intuitive. Yeah, so I would say, I mean, obviously it takes time to set it up properly before you start. I mean, we also mentioned this. I think Arun mentioned this also in his session. That takes some time, but to get just used to SciNote itself, that was pretty easy. That was me, for example, I would say a couple of days working with it.
Okay, perfect. So a bit like what we sort of discussed too, right? Like having that process and kind of getting used to it and kind of setting it up. Arun, do you have anything else to add when it comes to
No,
how long does it take?
I would agree with Yannick on what he said. From what I've seen working with customers, typically after actually using SciNote, and I don't mean just, you know, clicking around, I mean actually adding some meaningful content and trying to assign it to someone or trying to manage a project, I would say within like a couple of days of using it, you get used to it, because a lot of the nomenclature used in SciNote, particularly related to team management, is pretty self-explanatory. Like our user roles go owner, user, and viewer. So viewer is like view access only, owner is maximum access, and then user is kind of in the middle.
Okay, perfect. Okay, I think so. Before we leave, I know that we have quite a few people still here. So before we leave to wrap our session, first of all, I want to thank you both, but I do want to try out one activity before we all leave, and I've been dying to try this activity. So I want to bring us to this activity called "What's Your Next Step?" a waterfall activity, and we're gonna try this to see if it works. So how the waterfall activity works is, and if people can bear with me, is that there will be a question on the next slide, and I would invite everyone who are participating in this webinar to type your answer for the question in the chat, but do not press enter just yet. Do not press enter, and we're gonna hold on. We're gonna enter information in the chat, and we're all gonna press the enter at the same time. And we'll get a chance to see what, you know, everyone's preparing to everyone's answer. We're also going to collect the answer and share that with through the email, so everyone can kind of learn from each other. So so again, there will be a question on the next slide. Don't enter your answer in the chat until we all say we're going to enter together, and we're going to all hit submit at the same time, and we'll share the summary at the end through the email. So let's see if this will work today. All right, so the question is, again, don't press enter just yet. The question is, what is your next step in improving communication and collaboration in your lab? And we're gonna give everyone like about 2-3 minutes quickly, well, maybe just a minute, quickly type in your answer in the chat box, and feel free to type anything, one step, 2 steps. It can be anything you think would be critical in kind of improving communication, collaboration inside your lab. Okay, and we're going to, okay, great. We have still a few participants here, so we're gonna see if this works out. All right. So, all right, I hope everyone has had a chance to enter the step. Oh, good. This is when I feel like a Jeopardy question, like, you know, dun, 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 dun. We should have music going for something like this. All right, we're gonna try this now. I'm gonna count down. We're gonna all press enter at the same time. And unfortunately, it seems like the panelists don't have access to the chat box, so we can do our little 3 people, you know, waterfall activity on our end. But I'm gonna say I'm gonna count down to 1, and everyone's gonna then hit enter. So 3, 2, 1. All right, perfect. All right, so we have quite a few answers, and great to hear that people are already thinking about the next step of doing a communication collaborator in a collaboration in a lab environment. We'll share those steps with others through our email, and then kind of learn from each other. Set up a project. I love some of your ideas, like trying out SciNote. Love that. Set up a project meeting. Like what we talk about, bring people on the same page, map out the processes to optimize, get people to use SciNote to its full potential. Yes, there is a lot of little tips and tricks that you can learn. So I think that's it for the session today. I want to thank everyone for participating from all around different locations. Yannick and Arun want to thank you for being here to do the presentation. And then we make sure to sign up for an email subscription if you want to hear about future webinars, if you're not already on our email list. And feel free to share, we'll send out an email with the webinar recording, so you can share that with others who you think might be interested in the topic but cannot attend today. Thank you all very much. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.